Have you ever wondered what home truly means as we grow older? Not just a roof overhead, but the feeling of being known by a space. The soft creak of the floor that has memorized your steps. The light that falls just right on the chair where you read. The smell of the kitchen after morning tea. And yet, for many between 60 and 80, the thought of aging often comes with a quiet fear of being moved, of being placed, of waking up one day in a room that does not remember you. We don't speak of it often, but the idea of the nursing home can feel like a closing door. But what if it isn't? What if aging is not about being taken care of, but about being cared for, with dignity, with choice, and with deep human connection? In today's reflection, we'll walk through 7 gentle alternatives to the traditional nursing home. Not theories, not wishful dreams, but real, living paths that many elders are walking right now. Paths that honor who you are, what you've lived, and the life you still wish to shape. Some of these options may surprise you. Some may feel like old truths remembered, but all are grounded in the belief that aging, like all seasons of life, deserves to be lived, not simply managed. So let us pause here. Take a breath and gently open this conversation. You deserve to know your options, not out of fear, but from a place of quiet power. Let's begin. Part 1. Staying home within home care. There's a story the Buddha once told his disciples, a gentle parable about a forest bird who built its nest year after year in the same familiar tree. The seasons changed, storms passed, but the bird returned each time, not because the tree was the strongest, but because it was known. Its curves, its shade, its quiet protection. In much the same way we humans build our lives into the walls around us. Our homes are more than bricks and beams. They are breathing journals. Every room holds a chapter, every object, a memory suspended in time. The chipped mug by the sink, the coat that still hangs on the back of the door though no one wears it anymore, the way the light falls across the hallway at 4 o'clock. None of this can be replaced, not really. And yet, somewhere along the road of aging, we're told that home is a luxury we must eventually leave behind. That safety and support can only be found in a facility. That care requires sacrifice, of space, of privacy, of independence. But is that truly the only way? Let me tell you about Eleanor. Eleanor is 78. She lives in a small craftsman house her husband built back in the 60s. The garden is overgrown now, but the wind still carries the scent of lavender he planted for her one spring afternoon when they were just beginning to grow old together. Her knees don't hold up the way they used to, and sometimes, yes, she forgets to take her evening medication. But 5 mornings a week, a woman named Carla knocks on her door with a warm smile and hands that know exactly where the teacups are kept. Carla doesn't just help with Eleanor's physical care, she brings rhythm back to the day. Together they water the plants, read the newspaper, cook simple meals, and most importantly, they laugh. Not performative chuckles, but deep belly laughs that carry grief, memory, and joy, all in one breath. Eleanor still sleeps in her own bed. She still folds her favorite blanket the same way her mother taught her. She still watches the birds from her kitchen window every afternoon with a steaming cup of chamomile. And every Sunday she walks, slowly but deliberately, to meet her neighbor for coffee. She didn't need to be moved. She just needed a hand, a presence, a bit of care wrapped in dignity. You see, in Buddhism, there is a concept known as Upanisaya, the condition of proximity. It speaks to the subtle but profound influence of what surrounds us. A familiar space, a comforting routine, a known silence. These shape our well-being more than any external solution ever could. Aging in place, with gentle support, honors that wisdom. And it's not just emotional, it's physiological. Research quietly affirms what many elders already feel in their bones, that staying in one's own home improves mental clarity, reduces depression, and even slows cognitive decline. It isn't stubbornness, it's a natural longing for continuity. But perhaps what's most beautiful about in-home care isn't the assistance, it's the preservation of identity. No one strips you of your rhythms. You decide what music plays in the morning. You choose what shirt to wear, even if it's the same one you've always loved. You wake up not in a schedule, but in your own time. Of course, this path requires planning. It requires conversation. It may involve bringing in caregivers, modifying spaces, and asking for help. Three things that many of us raised to value resilience and self-reliance find difficult. But here's a gentle reminder from the Dhammapada. If one finds a wise companion who walks the path with insight, let them walk together, overcoming all danger. Help is not weakness. It is walking with someone who can steady the lantern while you find your next step. So pause with me, just for a moment. Ask yourself gently, what does home feel like in your heart? Is it a place, a routine, a feeling? And more importantly, what would it take for that to remain yours? This is not just about care, it's about continuity. The kind that lets you remain who you are, even as the body changes. It's about waking up in a place that knows your story and doesn't ask you to start over. In-home care isn't a compromise, it's a bridge, a compassionate middle ground between total independence and complete relocation. For many, it's the most human path forward. And so, as we leave Eleanor's garden and her steaming cup of tea behind, let's take one more quiet breath and carry with us the reminder that aging does not mean departure. Sometimes, it simply means being seen, right where you are. Now, let's gently walk onward, because there are more paths to discover. Ones that speak not just to where you live, but who you live with. Part 2. Living with family in a supportive arrangement. Some years ago, in a quiet monastery nestled deep within the hills of Chiang Mai, a young monk once asked his teacher, "Master, what is the hardest part of the path?" The old teacher, weathered by time and silence, smiled gently and said, "It's not walking alone, it's walking with others without losing your step." That, I believe, speaks to the heart of what many elders feel when the idea of moving in with family is placed on the table. The question is rarely about love. It is about space, about dignity, about not wanting to be anyone's burden, and yet also not wanting to disappear. Let me introduce you to Harold. After 62 years of marriage, Harold found himself waking up to an empty house. The silence was no longer peaceful, it was sharp, echoing through rooms that once held shared routines, small arguments, and the hum of a life built together. His daughter Jenna lived just 40 minutes away with her husband and 2 children. One afternoon, over pie and decaf coffee, she said, "Dad, there's space above our garage. It's yours if you want it. You won't have to be alone." At first, Harold hesitated. Pride, perhaps, or maybe fear of intruding. But eventually, he agreed, with one condition: "I need to keep my own door, my own morning." And so they built it together. A cozy suite, private entrance, small kitchen, a bookshelf full of his favorite biographies. And each night, he had the option to walk downstairs and join the family for dinner, or stay upstairs with his radio and crossword. You see, multi-generational living isn't new, it's ancient. It existed long before we compartmentalized life into units and facilities. In Buddhist culture, the idea of kalyasa mitata, spiritual friendship, extends to family. It means living in mutual care, where support doesn't drain, it uplifts. But here's the key: it only works when done right. And right doesn't mean perfect. It means intentional. It means having conversations many families avoid. What does privacy mean to you? What rhythms do we want to keep separate? How can we help each other without stepping over each other? Harold still tends to his tomato plants on the upstairs balcony. He doesn't babysit unless he wants to. He teaches his grandson how to whittle wood. And sometimes after dinner, he and Jenna share stories about her mother. Some that are funny, others that carry tears like old friends. He is part of the family, not absorbed by it. From a psychological view, this kind of arrangement does something remarkable. It restores purpose. So many older adults don't suffer from a lack of care, but a lack of being needed. In truth, the soul does not retire. It only quiets when it feels unseen. And here is the subtle gift: being with family, when structured well, invites the elder to still be a giver, to tell stories, to cook Sunday pancakes, to offer calm when the young are hurried. These are not small things, they are medicine. But it's important not to romanticize it. Resentment can grow if roles blur, if the elder becomes the default caregiver, or if boundaries dissolve under the weight of unspoken expectations. In these moments, I often return to a lesson from the Buddha: better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. Families who thrive in shared spaces speak these words. They ask, they listen, they adapt. So perhaps this is the reflection for today. What would it feel like to live close to family without being folded into their lives? Could you be near and still be whole? This path, like all the others, isn't for everyone, but for many, it offers more than security. It offers connection. The soft knowing that someone is nearby when the night feels too long. The joy of watching a grandchild grow into their own rhythm. The healing that can come when love is given a second chapter, under one roof, but across respectful thresholds. It may not be easy, but sometimes the hardest paths are the ones that return us to the most human truths. And so we walk on, carrying Harold's quiet mornings and Jenna's warm invitation in our hearts. Because the question of who we live with is never separate from how we feel seen. Now, let us turn the page gently and consider what happens when you don't just stay with family, but stay in your own home, with that home lovingly reshaped to grow old with you. Part 3. Aging in place with smart home modifications. There is a Zen teaching that says the obstacle is the path, not something to be avoided, but something to be understood, softened, walked with, and ultimately transformed. For many elders, the greatest obstacle to staying at home is not a lack of love or will, but the quiet danger that their space no longer fits their changing body. A slippery bathroom tile, a steep staircase, a hallway just a little too narrow, all small details that suddenly become mountains. And yet, what if those very obstacles could be gently reshaped into stepping stones? Let me tell you about Linda. At 79, Linda had lived in the same sun-washed bungalow for over 4 decades. Her late husband used to play jazz on Sunday mornings while she folded laundry and talked to the geraniums. But after a minor fall in the shower, no broken bones, just bruised confidence, her children began insisting she move to somewhere safer. She almost gave in. But then, a neighbor shared a different idea, not about moving out, but about making her stay smarter, safer, and more supportive. Within weeks, a quiet transformation began, not a renovation for appearance, but an adaptation for life. The bathtub became a walk-in shower. Grab bars were installed, not glaringly, but blended into the warmth of the walls like part of the story. Soft, non-slip floors replaced the cracked tiles. Motion sensor lights greeted her gently in the hallway when she rose at night. And perhaps most importantly, a small voice assistant now reminded her to take her heart medication, called her daughter when needed, and played her husband's favorite Miles Davis track every Sunday, just the way he used to. Linda didn't lose freedom, she regained it. You see, in Buddhism, there is a notion of skillful means upaya. It's the idea that wisdom isn't always about renouncing the world, but learning how to shape it with compassion and intelligence. When our bodies change, it doesn't mean we have failed. It means the conditions have shifted, and we, like a river bending around a rock, adjust our flow. Aging in place is not stubbornness, it is mindfulness in action. Of course, the word technology can feel cold or even intimidating to some, but let us reframe it. Think of it not as machinery, but as gentle presence, a pill dispenser that never forgets, a video doorbell that lets you see who's there before stepping into the unknown, a thermostat that learns your comfort without needing to be told. None of these things take away your autonomy, they protect it. None of them define you, they support you in continuing to be yourself. And isn't that the heart of the matter? For so many, the fear is not of aging, but of becoming other to oneself, losing the ability to move, to remember, to choose. But by adjusting the home, you are simply choosing to keep choosing. You are shaping the outer world to reflect the dignity of your inner one. Let's pause here for a soft question. What might your home look like if it truly loved you back? If it understood your slower steps, your deeper need for rest, your wish to live gently, not carefully? Linda now says that her home feels wiser. It knows her habits. It offers her peace, not pity. And when she sits by the window in the late afternoon light, she feels not like a woman nearing 80, but like someone whose life is still unfolding. She didn't move out, she moved closer to herself. And here's another truth worth holding. Modifying a home is not just for safety, it's an act of tenderness, an offering to the self. It says, I still matter, this life is still mine, just as the Buddha taught that we can cultivate the mind like a garden, removing weeds, planting seeds, adjusting with care. We can also cultivate our space. We can create surroundings that support stillness, clarity, and ease. We can let the walls breathe with us. So if you're considering whether your home can still hold you, remember, you don't need to fit your changing body into an unchanging box. You can soften the walls, expand the doorways. Let the space bless your aging rather than resist it. Because the truth is, a well-loved home is not one that looks young. It's one that grows with you, not away from you. And now, as we rise from Linda's cozy chair and walk down her softly lit hallway, we begin to wonder, what if we didn't walk this aging path alone? What if, just beyond our own door, a shared life waited, with children, with grandchildren, with loved ones, ready to welcome us not as dependents, but as wisdom keepers? Let us gently step forward into the next chapter. Part 4. Multi-generational living with clear boundaries. In the early days of the monastic Sangha, the Buddha spoke often about suma boundaries, not as a way to separate, but as a way to protect the harmony of togetherness. Without them, even the most devoted community would fray. With them, relationships could deepen like the roots of an old Bodhi tree, each part distinct, yet held in quiet unity. Modern life, in its fractured rhythms, has slowly pulled generations apart. Grandparents in one place, parents in another, children growing up sometimes, barely knowing the scent of their elders' kitchens. But now, in a world reawakening to the value of closeness, many families are choosing to come back together. And yet, living together doesn't mean becoming entangled. It means coexisting with love, with space, with the quiet understanding that each person must still be a person, not a role. Let me tell you about Patricia. At 83, she had weathered many storms: widowhood, cancer, the sudden move from her childhood home. When her daughter, Elise, gently offered her a space in the family's home, Patricia hesitated. She wasn't afraid of being unwanted. Elise had always been devoted, but she feared being absorbed, becoming grandma the babysitter, mom the dependent, a shadow of herself in someone else's light. But Elise had thought about that too. They worked together to carve out a private suite at the back of the house, a separate entrance, her own kitchenette, her own schedule, the decor, all hers. Old photos, hand-stitched curtains, even the clock that chimed slightly offbeat, just the way she liked it. What made it work wasn't just the walls, it was the agreements. The boundary conversations happened before the move, not after tempers had frayed. Who cooks? Who cleans? What time is off limits? When are shared meals optional, not expected? More importantly, Elise didn't just say, "Come live with us." She said, "Come live with us, as you." And Patricia, she flourished, not by doing less, but by being seen more clearly. She became the bedtime storyteller. Every Thursday, she led the quiet hour with her grandkids. No screens, just candles, tea, and old tales. She shared family recipes, but no one expected her to cook unless she wanted to. Some evenings, she kept to herself with her knitting and old records, and no one knocked. This is the kind of living that honors both past and present. That says, you are still you, and we are better for it. The Buddhist path reminds us that right relationship depends not on proximity, but on presence. The Satipatthana Sutta teaches us to be mindful, not only of our breath and body, but also of our relationships, how they shift, how they nourish, how they require awareness. And awareness is exactly what makes multi-generational living thrive. It's not about recreating the good old days. It's about weaving together new rhythms that respect the tempo of each person's life, where the elder is not a helper by default, where the adult child is not a caretaker by assumption, where roles evolve, but no one is erased. Let's pause here with a simple question. If you were to live with family again, what would you need in place to feel free, not folded? Sometimes the answer is a door that closes. Sometimes it's simply the agreement that your mornings are yours. And yes, it takes work. It takes gentle reminders that love without boundaries can feel like drowning. That presence, when overextended, can become pressure. But with care, these homes become not obligations, but sanctuaries. Let's not forget, aging can be lonely, not because of being alone, but because of being unseen. Living with family, when structured well, doesn't just offer help with groceries or someone to change the light bulb. It restores the miracle of being mirrored, a child's laughter, a shared pot of tea, a place to be, even on the days when you feel invisible to the world outside. Patricia now says, "I've never felt more part of something without losing myself." And that may be the quiet dream many elders don't dare speak, to belong without vanishing. So we walk on, not away from independence, but toward a deeper kind, where the self remains intact, even as lives intertwine. And just beyond this chapter lies another path, one not rooted in family, but in community, a village of peers, a place where solitude is optional and support is always near. Let us turn there softly. Part 5. Independent living communities with on-demand support. There is a moment, often quiet and unnoticed, when solitude begins to turn. At first, it is sweet, a freedom from noise, from obligation, from the need to explain yourself. But over time, the silence deepens. The tea tastes different when no one's there to drink it with you. The sunset feels a little lonelier when there's no one to turn to and say, "Look at that sky." In Buddhist thought, there's a beautiful teaching called Sangha, the spiritual community. It reminds us that while solitude can nurture the soul, we also need the gentle friction of others to grow, to feel, to belong. We are not islands, as much as we may try to be. That's where independent living communities come in, not as retirement hubs, but as modern sanghas for the soul. Let me tell you about Richard. Richard was 78, newly retired, and painfully alone. His wife had passed 3 years earlier, and though his children called once a week, they lived hours away, each busy with lives of their own. His house, once filled with conversation and clutter, now echoed. The television became background noise just to fill the air. Days slipped by like fog, soft, grey and forgettable. One afternoon, while picking up prescriptions, he saw a flyer for a nearby independent living community. It wasn't a nursing home. It wasn't assisted living. It was something else. A middle path. Curious and truthfully desperate for change, he went to visit. What he found surprised him. Not long hallways and sterile lights, but a small cottage with a porch swing. Walking trails lined with bird feeders. A shared woodworking studio. A weekly film club. A quiet room for meditation. Most importantly, a choice, privacy when he wanted it, community when he needed it. Richard moved in that spring. He still made his own coffee each morning. He still read the paper front to back. But now there were people who noticed if he didn't show up for Wednesday's movie night. There was a nurse who checked in only when asked. There were potlucks, nature walks, chess games under the oak tree. No pressure, just presence. You see, independent living communities are not about care. First, they are about connection. Designed for those who still live well on their own, but no longer wish to do it entirely alone. In Buddhism, there's a concept known as paticca, samappada, interdependence. Everything arises through relationships. Nothing exists in isolation. Our well-being is not sealed inside us. It is shaped by who we are near, what we hear, how often we are seen. Richard used to dread the weekends. Now he looks forward to Sunday's storytelling circle. He even started teaching beginners wood carving, something he hadn't done in decades. His hands are slower, yes, but his eyes have that spark again. And it's not because someone took care of him. It's because someone sat beside him. Let's pause here. Can you remember the last time you felt truly part of something? Not out of duty, but out of delight. Independent living communities offer that, not by replacing your independence, but by surrounding it with support you control. Need help picking up groceries? Done. Want meals delivered twice a week? Easy. Prefer to cook your own breakfast in silence? No problem. It's not about programs, it's about options. And no two communities are the same. Some are art-focused, others prioritize wellness and walking trails. Some are nestled near libraries, others near nature. The key is this: you choose not only where you live, but how you live. Of course, this option isn't for everyone. It may not be financially accessible for all, though more affordable models are emerging every year. It may feel like too much change at once, but for many, It's the sweet spot, freedom wrapped in companionship. And the psychological benefits? Profound. Loneliness, though quiet, erodes health more deeply than many physical ailments. Studies show that seniors in independent living communities experience better sleep, improved cognition, and a renewed sense of meaning. Not because of medicine, but because of mattering. As the Buddha once said, if you find no one to support you on the spiritual path, walk alone. But if you find wise companions, walk together with joy and mindfulness. These communities offer just that. A space where joy doesn't feel forced, where days still belong to you, but moments are shared. So we walk with Richard now, down the gravel path, lined with tulips and memory. We hear the laughter drifting from the community kitchen. We see the porch lights twinkling like quiet invitations. And we ask ourselves, if you had the chance to live among those who see aging not as decline but as a chapter rich with presence, would you take it? From this place of gentle community, our journey turns once more, not toward institutions or formal care, but toward something even more radical. A village where the young and the old live together, not out of necessity, but out of mutual joy. Let us walk into that possibility now. Part 6. Intergenerational Living Communities. Once, the Buddha told a story about a village where people of all ages gathered beneath a Bodhi tree. The elders would offer stories and stillness, while the children brought noise and laughter. It was said that wisdom flowed downward like a stream, and joy rose upward like incense. In that space, age was not a division, it was a dialogue. We may not sit under Bodhi trees anymore, but the question remains, what if we chose to grow older not apart from the world, but right in the middle of it? This is the quiet revolution of intergenerational living communities, places where young and old do not merely coexist, but co-create. They are not facilities, they are neighborhoods. Not quiet corridors of isolation, but gardens of shared rhythm. Here, a grandmother might lead a poetry circle while a college student teaches her how to use her tablet. Here, wisdom is not stored away, it's passed like bread at a dinner table. Let me tell you about Margaret. At 76, she was still vibrant, witty, and full of music, though the walls of her empty suburban house had grown heavy with silence. Her children lived far away. Most of her neighbors had either moved on or passed on. She said it felt like the world had quietly continued without me. Then she found Juniper Grove, a small intergenerational community nestled in Oregon, where elders, families, students, and artists lived side by side in clustered cottages and shared courtyards. There were no gates, no age zones, no whispered reminders of who belonged where. Margaret moved into a modest home near the community garden. Next door lived a young teacher named Marissa and her toddler son. Across the lane was Harvey, a 20-year-old studying music. On Thursdays, Margaret hosted poetry and pie in her kitchen. In return, Harvey helped her set up her new phone. Marissa brought soup when Margaret had a cold. The toddler, he brought squeals and sticky fingers and joy. Margaret now says, "I haven't felt this alive in years," and it's not just sentiment, it's science. Studies show that elders living in intergenerational environments experience slower cognitive decline and lower rates of depression, not because they are constantly stimulated, but because they are constantly connected. And for the younger residents, the benefits are just as rich. They grow more grounded, more empathetic, less glued to screens, more attuned to stories that began long before they were born. There's a phrase in Buddhism, anatta, non-self. It speaks to the illusion of separateness. We are not fixed beings sealed in boxes, labeled by age, race, or role. We are ever-changing, influenced by those around us. The more varied our connections, the more whole we become. Intergenerational communities embrace this truth. They create proximity without pressure. You don't have to attend everything. You don't have to parent, grandparent, or supervise. You simply have to be. And in your being, you become part of something much larger than yourself. Let's pause here with a gentle wondering. What might it feel like to be part of a village again? Not the one you grew up in, but the one you grow older in. One where your presence is enough. Your stories are currency. Your smile is seen. Your silence is respected. Of course, this kind of living isn't for everyone. It may take adjusting, letting go of certain expectations, learning to live with diversity of pace and personality. But for those willing, it offers a kind of nourishment that no pill, no television, no structured senior activity can match. Because connection isn't just a luxury. At a certain point in life, it becomes a form of medicine. The medicine of being asked for advice. The medicine of having your garden admired. The medicine of being needed, even just for a laugh. As the Buddha once said, if we could see the miracle of a single flower clearly, our whole life would change. And sometimes that flower is not in a temple or a vase. Sometimes it's the laughter of a child across a shared dinner table, or a teenager asking about your record collection, or a neighbor who thanks you for simply sitting on the porch at the same time each day. Margaret's life, once shrinking, now stretches again, not geographically, but in meaning. She no longer counts days, she fills them, and not because she has more to do, but more to be part of. So we walk on now, hand in hand with this idea that maybe the question isn't where we grow old, but with whom. And just beyond this moment, a final path emerges, one that isn't bound to location or layout, but to choice. The simple sacred right to shape your life's last chapters with intention, not obligation. Let's walk into that reflection together. Part 7. Letting your soul choose the setting. There is a soft truth tucked inside many of the Buddha's teachings. You are the path. Not your body, not your belongings, not your address or your labels, but you. Your awareness, your choices, your capacity to wake up again each morning and say, I am still here, and this life is still mine. And perhaps nowhere is that truth more quietly tested than in the choices we make about where and how we live as we age. By now, we've journeyed through cottages and quiet rooms, through gardens with laughter and bedrooms with grab bars. We've seen how aging doesn't need to mean disconnection. But there is one more path, one that doesn't look the same for everyone because it's not a place on the map. It's a way of deciding. A way of listening inward, not outward. Let me share with you a story, not of a place, but of a person. Her name is Claire. She's 81, spirited, sharp, a former librarian who still remembers the Dewey Decimal System better than most remember phone number. For a long time, Claire believed that aging meant settling, downsizing, giving up, fading out politely. Then one day, after visiting 3 different senior apartments, all beige and polite and completely disconnected from the wildness she loved, she paused, sat quietly on a park bench, and asked herself the kind of question we usually avoid. What would it feel like to live the rest of my life in a way that feels like me? Not convenient, not expected, not safe by someone else's standards, but true. The answer wasn't in any brochure. It was in her heart. Claire sold her suburban house, took a small portion of her savings, and moved into a modest co-housing space outside Taos, New Mexico. Not a senior community, a shared living collective, artists, writers, and yes, a few goats. She now lives in a sunlit casita with shelves of poetry and a wind chime she made herself. Every Tuesday, she hosts Stories by Firelight, where neighbors of all ages gather, sip tea, and trade tales from their week. Claire doesn't need daily care, not yet. But when the time comes, she says, "I'd rather have one person help me in my own chair, in my own view, than be surrounded by strangers in a place that doesn't know my name." Her choice may not be yours, but that's the point. It doesn't have to be. In the Dhammapada, we are reminded, as a flower does not pick and choose the bees, the wise do not cling to only one form but bloom where the light leads them. And so, part 7 is not another solution. It is an invitation to step back, to reflect, to ask yourself, what kind of space makes you feel seen, not stored? What kind of setting allows your days to unfold, not be scheduled? What kind of place lets you breathe as yourself, not a number, not a room assignment, not a category? Maybe it's a small apartment near a library where you can still walk to buy your own bread. Maybe it's a senior village with a shuttle bus and a Thursday bridge group. Maybe it's a shared farmhouse with old friends where no one minds your forgetfulness. Maybe it's staying right where you are, with the help of neighbors and a few thoughtful adjustments. There is no right answer. There is only the answer that brings peace to your heart, even before the first box is packed. And if you don't know yet, that's okay. Let your soul speak slowly. Let it try things. Let it dream, even now. Because this stage of life is not a coda. It is not the quiet ending to a loud song. It is a movement of its own, a new melody, softer perhaps, but no less sacred. And you have the right to shape it, to protect your rhythms, to reclaim your voice, to choose where the next chapters unfold. And so we close, not with instruction, but with encouragement. May your home, whatever shape it takes, be a place of warmth, of welcome, and of quiet joy. May you be surrounded, not just by safety, but by soul. May your space reflect the truth that you are still becoming, not just surviving. You have lived too much life to hand over the pen without one last glorious verse. So choose, not out of fear, not out of what others expect, but out of love, for yourself, for your story, for the still unwritten mornings that wait patiently ahead. Conclusion: coming home to yourself. So here we are, dear friend. We've walked together through gardens and porches, through quiet rooms and vibrant neighborhoods. We've listened to Eleanor's crossword mornings, Harold's quiet independence, Linda's reimagined safety, Patricia's protected space, Richard's rediscovered laughter, Margaret's interwoven community, and Claire's chosen freedom. And now the question returns, not as pressure, but as possibility. What does it mean for you to grow old and still feel like yourself? Not just alive, but a light. Not just secure, but sovereign. Not just helped, but honored. Aging is not a problem to be solved. It is a sacred unfolding, and the place you choose to live should feel less like a solution and more like a mirror. A place that reflects your joys, your rhythms, your inner quiet. In the end, this is not just about living longer, it's about living truer. So let your next step, whatever it is, come from a place of clarity, not fear, a place of stillness, of soul, of trust in your own becoming. And if this reflection stirred something within you, hold it gently, let it guide your questions, or share it with someone who's quietly carrying the same ones. Until we meet again, may you walk gently through your days, not toward the end, but deeper into the heart of your own life.